I'm making a webcomic. The idea came to me during a trip with my partner. We visited a castle ruin, and I thought, wouldn't it be fun if I drew us as princess and knight? So I did that, and from that sketch, I was like, well, wouldn't it be fun if that princess had a story? And here we are. But how do I transform a loose idea like princess story into a script? First, I fantasize a lot about the story. I feel it out in my head and make it look really cool, much cooler than the end result will probably ever be. And if those images in my head really excite me for longer than a week, I decide to start writing it down. If you go to the end of the video, there will be a summary of everything I mentioned throughout. Usually it starts with loose notes about the story and the images I dreamed up. Just a few sentences on any notes app will do. But then there are two scenarios. The first, if the story feels like it needs an outline because it has a complex plot or many character arcs or specific world building, stuff like that, well, if that's the case, then I'll map out the basic plot points in bullet point format. In the second scenario, I feel confident enough in what I dreamed up that I just start writing the script directly. Which of those two options is better is really a gut feeling thing. I think an important skill as an artist is to build up confidence in your own intuition. So my intuition for this story told me that I should just go into the script directly because of two reasons. One, it was supposed to be short and was kind of born of like a casual fun idea, so it didn't feel very high stakes. And two, it was supposed to build on top of a classical story format we already know. So the main plot line was going to be simple. My intention with this project was to make it feel like a fairy tale or something from a storybook, because I think that's our first contact with princesses and knights, and I really wanted to take this trope and put a spin on it. By the way, if you haven't read the first chapter, it's a story about a princess and knights. It's out now on Webtoon, link in the description. Okay, so this script was so loose and kind of thrown together that I wrote it in Google Docs with barely any formatting. But that's very unlike me. All the other scripts I wrote before were done in Writer Duet, which is like a specific software that puts your script into the classic screenplay format. I think this format was decided on so everyone in the American film industry could estimate how much film time the text would take up. So traditionally, an average page with dialogue is around 1 minute of film. But anyway, since I knew the story was going to be drawings and not a film, I kind of just didn't care. Also, I wanted something easy to access on the iPad because I was using that to write the story on the road, during the trip still. It was all very spontaneous and I just really felt like starting to write the story. Honestly, that casualness to it really made it fun. And I think that fun is what kept me so energized to keep writing, even if I was making it up on the spot without a plan. So in that scenario B, how do I approach writing a script straight ahead without planning? With two guiding principles. The first is something I believe I heard Tarantino talk about once, but I'm not entirely sure. It's to just think, what is the direct consequence of what I just wrote? That can be an action consequence or a conceptual consequence. An action consequence would be something more literal. So like if I just wrote a scene where the character loses all the loot their group just stole, the next scene would probably be their group being angry at them and confronting them. A conceptual consequence is more about general story and character arcs. So if I, for example, just wrote a scene that introduces a new character by himself, it would make sense if the next scene is about his relationship to the protagonist. In some story formats, those consequences won't be presented chronologically, but you can think of them chronologically and write it in your first draft chronologically, and then rearrange them like puzzle pieces. The second guiding principle is something that seems easy, but I personally struggled with a lot, which is to put stuff in the story that you think is fun, that entertains yourself. Why should you do that? Because that is what will make the story something personal to you, making it more fun and probably more original naturally. We have the tendency to follow patterns we have seen before. Our first idea will probably always be the more average one, the one we have seen in like 12 movies before. We need to make an active effort to break out of those patterns, and the easiest way is by following personal preferences. So one example of me doing that in my own story is that I put a character's backstory in there, but in terms of story structure and like arcs and rules, it's not truly a useful scene. It doesn't make a lot of logical sense to put it in the story, but I wanted to because I felt like it. It excited me to think about that character's backstory. So those are the two things I think about while dreaming up the story, just thinking about it. When it comes to writing it down in script format, there's 2 technical tips I keep in mind. The dialogue. Every single thing that will be said needs to be written out. Stuff like, and then they have a conversation about the weather, is not something drawable. I need to know what exactly is being said. Then the action descriptions. I learned that movie screenplays should only describe things that can be captured with a camera. So writing something like, Anna feels horrible, her world is shattered, she can never trust Clara again, is useless, because what does that mean visually? So what I would write is, Anna stares at the wall. Clara tries to catch her attention, but Anna keeps turning her head away. It communicates the same thing, but in actions. The other description works for novels and like poems, but not something visual. Even if that stuff is happening inside the characters, it's useless for me to put that in the script. And honestly, it's just those 2 basic rules that I try to keep in mind constantly while writing the script. I am not a person who worries about paneling and pages because during the thumbnailing stage, I naturally find out how long something is going to be and how I should divide it into chapters. So I'm really not sure if it's very helpful to plan the specific division of pages and chapters during the scripting page. I would do that in the thumbnailing stage because it's more flexible. You can rearrange things. That's how I do it. Sometimes I add specific ideas for ways I want to draw things, like add flowers in the background here, or make this a close-up shot. But usually I try to leave those decisions for the thumbnailing stage only, which I will be covering in the next video. Thank you for watching. Please leave any remaining questions below. I will gladly answer them. See you in the next one. Bye!